Hi, I'm Bob Barbet, and I'm back for the second in a series of short 3-minute plus or minus videos talking about how we can use the refrac process to help make America's old oil and gas wells great again. You never get tired of saying that. Last week we talked about risk reduction, the importance of risk reduction in refrac optimization, and how to do that with a four-step procedure. First of which is getting the correct team in place with the right disciplines at the table. The second is make sure you have the remaining oil and gas there to justify a refrac. What's the original oil and gas in place and what's been recovered and where it is. The third is why is it there to start with? What reasons is it still there? Why didn't we get it out the first time? What happened mechanically on the first frac? And then the fourth is, what do we need to do to go ahead and learn from what was done before and also implement best practice on this one. The ideal team for de-risking refracs consists of a number of professionals, petrophysicists, of course, and then the reservoir engineer working closely with the petrophysicist, the geologist, the completion engineer, the frac service company engineer, and the production engineer. They all have specific roles. Petrophysicist provides the oil and gas in place for the well bores. The geologist extrapolates that between the well bores because the petrophysicist is looking 8 inches of rock, and the geologist has to map that to the rest of the reservoir. The completion engineer puts up the completion design together and then works with the frac service company engineer to implement it. And then during the production engineer makes sure that you don't undo all the good stuff you did, like, for instance, flowback procedures and the like. And that's the ideal team. However, instead of a ideal team, what happens more often than not is you get, instead of a production engineer, you get a reproduction engineer, and skilled in using that little green button, and a frac service company engineer. And that, that's the procedure on a large variety of new completions now that seems to work reasonably well. But we're starting to get into some gray areas with refracking. There's a lot more moving parts than there are with new wells. More things can happen. And the candidate selection part is not something you should assign to, just arbitrary rules of thumb. You want to make sure that you've got, a valid prize there, a valid target there, and that you've got a valid program to move forward with it and make sure it's all the disciplines buy into that. Case in point was a major company in Mid-Continent had a fairly successful refrac program going using the integrated team approach, and when they finally shut it down though, and when one of the engineers gave a talk at one of the SPE meetings up in Oklahoma City and confided that basically there were a lot of factors involved, but one of the factors involved was that the integrated team really left the building when that happened. They had considered this to be now a proven process that they could turn over to the field and basically go ahead and repeat as necessary. And that was, not the only factor that had to do with the termination of the program, but certainly a contribution. So, de-risking these refracs is very important, and it's also very important to have the right people on board, get the right team in place. Don't take shortcuts. It's not a good place to take shortcuts if you want to reduce risk and increase the probability that you're going to get continued funding for refracs internally or from your investors, or more importantly, which is the big prize I keep saying, is that you got the potential to book behind pipe reserves, and that you have to have consistency for. You don't want to be doing cookie cutter refracs if that's your goal, because that goal is substantial. To be able to go into marginal fields and show that refracs can improve the production, and now start getting some credit for behind pipe reserves, which is not done yet anywhere that I'm aware of, but it's certainly an allowable item based on the financial institutions we've talked to. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit about determining the size of the prize, how the petrophysicists and geologists work together, and the reservoir engineer as well, to determine what the remaining oil and gas in place is. And then we'll move on to the other segments in subsequent weeks. But that's all we have for now, and we'll see you next week in our continuing discussion of how to try and make America's old oil and gas wells great again. Thank you.